Hello everyone, this is Jason from Iron Mission. We're going to take you through the tail of the dragon. We're starting in the north end right here by the reservoir, and we're going to ride the whole thing. And as I'm doing it, I'm going to share with you some things that you should consider if you've never ridden the tail of the dragon before. Definitely some things to prepare for as you do this. It does rain here for like the first few seconds. Like, I don't know what happens, like for like 3 seconds we get rained on. The cameras get a little wet and then it all dries off. So just to let you know, it's going to get a little wet here in a second. But the tail of the dragon, it is Route 129. If you're starting on the north end like I like to do, it's going to start in Tennessee. You're going to end in North Carolina. And I really like starting it in this direction because there's kind of a reward when you finish. You get to go to Deal's Gap, and there's some souvenir shops, some places to take pictures that say, hey, I completed the tail of the dragon. If you are into that sort of accomplishment, it's just, to me, it's funner to start on the north side. Now, when you're thinking about this road, if you've never ridden it before, some things to consider. One, there are going to be some elevation changes. I don't think it's tremendously drastic, but there is. I mean, you're in the mountains, you're in the Smoky Mountains, and so yes, there's going to be some ups and downs and some elevation changes that you have to deal with. The other thing, I think what makes the tail of the dragon challenging is there are going to be some fairly sharp turns. There's going to be a number of switchbacks, which are basically like U-turns on a road. And so you do have to consider that with the sharp turns. And then, of course, you've got some very narrow roads, as you're going to see. And I don't know if the camera really does it justice, but once you really start hitting the bulk of the tail, which we haven't quite done at this point in the video, the road does seem to narrow up a little bit. And so you've got all of those things combined. You've got elevation changes, you've got some turns. In fact, they said that there are 318 turns in the 11 miles that the tail of the dragon is. So just keep that in mind. And because of that, I'm going to rate this road on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of difficulty, right around an 8 to an 8.5. This is absolutely positively not a road that I would want an inexperienced rider riding on. I think a rider should have at least a couple, 2-3 years of some really serious riding experience and putting on a lot of miles, because with this road, it's not about just blasting through turns and doing high-speed stuff. In fact, for the most part, you're going to be in like the first 2 gears, maybe third gear once in a while. And so your slow speed motorcycle game really has to be on point here, because again, you're not only just dealing with the sharp turns, you're dealing with changes in elevation. It's different when you're taking a sharp turn, you're going up the side of a incline or down. And so just kind of keep that in mind. One of the other things to consider is one of the biggest concerns here, if your skill set is on point, that's awesome, but you really have to pay attention to traffic coming in the other direction. It didn't really happen here, as you're going to see throughout the video, but the last time we were at Tail of the Dragon last year, in fact, there were a couple of cars, one of which was a pickup truck carrying a trailer, a flatbed, that was probably too long for the Tail of the Dragon. It kind of veered off into our lane. And it's one of those things where when you're coming around some of these turns, as you're going to see in a few minutes, you can't really see cars coming. And so it's pretty surprising, even when a car is in its own lane or a motorcycle's in its own lane, they just seem to come out of nowhere because they're coming around a tight turn, you're taking a tight turn. It can be a little bit distracting. And so again, for newer riders, that can be a little bit much to overcome. If you're an experienced rider, not a big deal. But if you've got an automobile in one of those tighter turns, and it's also, well, crossing over the middle yellow lane, that can be a little bit disconcerting for sure. All right, so like I said, I'm going to take you through the entire ride. And so if you're considering it, at least you'll know what to expect. The one thing I will say is, I was here with one of my friends who rode it with me last year. My wife was here, Joanna was here, and this was the first time that she had ridden it, and she does not like heights. And so she is very afraid of heights, and so she kept asking me, hey, are there going to be large drop-offs? Am I going to be like all of a sudden up? We were just in Colorado. We were in the Rocky Mountains, and we went up on the Mountain State Park, and it was basically the highest point in that road was 12,000 feet. And as you got closer, there was no guardrails, there was no trees, and the drop-offs were really, really intense. That's not the case here. So if you're someone who's like super afraid of heights, you're like, wow, we're in the Smoky Mountains and we've got this really technical ride, which you do, it's not going to be something where you're going to look out and see just massive drop-offs. Now, clearly you can see that, yeah, you're on the side of a mountain here, and if you look out into the trees, you can see that there is definitely a large slope. But it's not something that usually people who are afraid of heights are really going to be overly concerned with. Plus, your eyes are going to be on the road. I asked my wife, I'm like, did you even notice any of the slopes on the side? She's like, no, I didn't notice it. I was so focused on the road that I didn't really have a whole lot of opportunity to look around. And yeah, there's not going to be a lot of sightseeing on this road either. Now, as you're going to see throughout this video, it is a road that will take you, if you're not rushing, and I recommend you don't, if you're just taking your time and you're enjoying the nice ride, it's going to take anywhere from around 20 to 25 minutes or so to get through that 11 miles because, like I said, the average speed that you're most likely going to be going is probably somewhere around 20, 25 miles an hour. Could you do it a whole lot faster? Maybe. I've seen videos where you've got those people out there who get it done a lot faster, but I personally want to enjoy the ride. And again, we're on big 950-pound touring bikes anyway. These bikes are not meant to carve up the canyons. When we were here, at the time that we were here, there was a Miata Club, and every year in the around August, the Miata Club comes out, and they're actually pretty decent, and it's a wide range of ages there, and no problems. They seem to take it easy, and we didn't have any issues with them coming in our lanes or racing behind us or trying to get around us or anything like that. And speaking of that, there are places where you can pull off. And so if you've got somebody behind you that's making you nervous, they want to take this road a little faster, there are a few places where you can pull off and let them pass. If someone is in front of you and they know that, just kind of etiquette of the tail of the dragon, they will most likely pull off and get out of your way so you can go about your business. So some tips. 10 things I think you should really know before you tackle the tail of the dragon. Number one is be well rested if you can. I know some people, when the day of a big ride, or if they think this is going to be super challenging, might be a little bit hard to sleep. I've got a buddy who every time we go for a big ride, or we're going to be doing something a little bit more on the challenging side like this, he has a hard time sleeping. But try to be well rested. Get to bed early. Get a full night's sleep. It's just going to help you think a lot more clearly when you are, and that's just generally speaking, right? It's not just about tail of the dragon. It's pretty much any time you ride, the more well-rested you are, the better you're going to be. And that means also be in a good headspace. This is absolutely not a road that you want to ride when you're angry or upset or you're trying to clear your mind. You're not trying to clear your mind on the tail of the dragon. Your mind needs to be fully focused on what you're doing. And so, again, that's just generally in motorcycle safety. I always hear people, I'm going to ride because I got mad, I need to cool off. That's not the time to ride. The time to ride is when you have your full mental faculties and you've got the ability to just focus on what you're doing. So tail the dragon, be well rested, don't be in a bad mood, don't be in a hurry. What I have found, and we've done this now a couple times, is I've taken advice from other people, go early in the morning. Now, you got to be a little careful here. The first time we did this, we're like, we're going to wake up at 6 o'clock, we're going to be out the door, because where we were staying in Gatlinburg, right off 441, and we were going to come here, and we figured, okay, we've got about an hour and a half ride, I think it was, from where we were staying to here. Well, guess what? We woke up and it was still dark. And so, at least in terms of when we always get here early August, it's not getting light out until 7 o'clock. And this is the last road I would want to ride in the dark. And so a couple things to consider is, one, especially around here, the roads, as you're seeing, there was a little bit of rain in the morning, but even if there's not, sometimes you're going to get some dew and you're going to have some fog and stuff. In fact, on the ride up here, there was a significant amount of fog on some of the roads that were still mountain roads, but there was still some decent amount of fog here. So just be aware of that, but you still want to try to ride it as early as you can. Typically, we will get to the tail right around 9 a.m. And even at 9 a.m., as you can see throughout this video, there's not a whole lot of traffic, and this is what we want. There was nobody behind us. There was nobody in front of us. You could see cars coming in the direction. We're very, very minimal. And so earlier in the morning is absolutely better. I can tell you from personal experience, by the time you get to late morning, 11 o'clock in the morning or so, noon, the afternoon, this road, in terms of the amount of traffic, picks up considerably. And like I said, it can be distracting, especially for those of you like I am. I come from Illinois. I'm a flatlander, right? So when you are taking these turns, where you have no visibility, and all of a sudden you take that turn and there's a car there. Even if the car is in their lane, it can just be a little bit startling. And so just be aware of that. And so earlier in the morning, you're going to have a lot less traffic. Also, do this on a weekday. All right, so that's another tip I would give you. The last couple of times that we rode it, it was a Thursday, and that was great. This particular Thursday of this year in 2025, it was a little bit busier than it was the previous year. However, if you ride this on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, again, we see lots of people coming up here when we're riding the other rides in the area, coming to Tail the Dragon, and it is significantly busier on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So try to keep it on a Monday through Thursday, early in the morning, and that's going to be by far the least congested, because, again, if you're a skilled rider, you're not so much worried about yourself, especially if you've got great mental faculties, you're not trying to rush through it. It's the concern is the other cars coming the other direction. Next thing, and I've mentioned this already, but I want to reiterate it. If you have a new rider in your group, they should be sitting this one out, right? So if you go to Tennessee and you're like, hey, we're going to ride some cool rides, there are some roads that are better than others for riders with a year or two experience. This is absolutely not one of them. So just be careful there. You're going to see here, this booth is, they take pictures. And so you've got various companies that are kind of perched out there, and they're really high quality pictures. I highly recommend if you ride the Tail of the Dragon and you go by one of those, look up the website. You just need to know your time, so the date and the time you think you passed through that area, and your pictures will be out there. They usually take 6, 8, 10 pictures. You pick the best one. They're pretty reasonably priced. I've done it. My buddies have done it. So it's kind of cool when you're going through Tail of the Dragon and you can get your picture done and you're not having to worry about someone trying to take the picture for you, because there's really no place for them to pull over and do that. Next thing, make sure your bike is in good running order. And again, this is something we should be doing all the time. It's way, way more important when you're dealing with this type of ride, this ride that is it's a technical ride. Again, you've got elevation changes. Your brakes need to be in good shape. This is not the time to, hey, I've got 25 or 30,000 miles on these brakes. It should be okay. Maybe not, okay? This is the time where you want to make sure that your bike is in good running order, that it's going through the gears smoothly. You're not having any bogged down issues. You're not like, oh, all of a sudden third gear doesn't work or second gear. Well, you're going to have a big problem. Your tires are properly inflated. They have enough tread, right? My wife and I, we had just got new tires 2 weeks before this trip, so we were in good shape there, and I'm glad we did, because our tires that we had, they had quite a few miles on them. But make sure, double check, make sure your bike is in good running order. This is not the time to find out that you've got some kind of an issue. Again, another tip, keep in mind, especially if you're riding a big old Harley like we are, you're going to spend most of your time somewhere between first and third gear. Right? A lot of times in second gear, just because you've got all these tight turns. There's really not a lot of space where you've got, as you're seeing throughout this video, where you've got a lot of straightaways or something like that, where you're going to be able to really get in there and mash through the gears, which is a good thing, because these turns come up tight, and sometimes you don't realize, just with the switchbacks and stuff, they get tighter as you're in the turn, and so it's probably best that you don't have a whole lot of straightaways to build up some speed. Another thing to keep in mind too is there are cops all over this road, and the police presence, and I love it. I absolutely love the fact that there are police. There's a pretty decent police presence. There were more last year than this year, but usually there is at least a motorcycle cop or some type of a cop car at the beginning, where we just turned on at the very beginning of the video. There is at least one, if not more, in one of these turnoffs. And there is almost always one at Deals Gap. So that's been our experience the last couple years, a pretty strong police presence. Like I said, I absolutely love this, because I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about those cars coming in the direction. If they've already seen a cop car or two, they're going to be a lot less likely to come flying in the other direction. And so I'm all for it. The more police presence you have on this road, to me, the better it is, the safer it's going to be, the less chances people are going to take. The other thing to consider is, if you're going to do this ride on your own, this is going to sound really strange at first, but if you're doing this ride by yourself, let somebody know that, hey, I'm going to be on the Tail of the Dragon. This is when I anticipate, pretty much where we started the video, where you turn off by that reservoir. Send a text message, quick phone call, say, hey, I'm starting the Tail of the Dragon. I should be done in about 30 minutes. If for some reason, especially if you're doing this in the morning like we are, there was nobody behind us, you could see a lot of times there's nobody around us. If someone had made a mistake, if I had made a mistake and I was by myself and I run off that turn right there, nobody's going to know that. Nobody's going to see your bike halfway down that mountainside. And if you're injured, you might not be able to call for help. So it's a really good idea when you're riding these technical rides, let somebody know, hey, I'm leaving. I'm starting it right now. I should be done in 30 minutes. If you don't hear from me in 45 minutes, something's probably wrong. So it's just a good safety thing. Now, if you're riding it with other people, maybe it's not as big of a deal. But if I were riding this by myself, that's probably something I would do. The other thing, too, relax, have fun. We always say ride your own ride. If you are riding with a group and that group is moving faster than you would like, you're a little bit uncomfortable, slow down. You're not here to impress anybody. Most of the people that you see on the tail of the dragon, you will never see again. If there's somebody behind you that's making you a little bit nervous because you can tell they want to run it a lot faster and they're getting kind of close to you, you have to look ahead, focus on what you're doing. Not worry about the people behind you. Worry about what's in front of you. If you're friends, you start to lose them because they're too far ahead, so be it. There's no way to get lost on this road. So you just follow the road. You're going to wind up in Deal's Gap with them. You might wind up there 30 seconds or 3 minutes later. Who cares, right? So just ride your own ride at your own pace and don't push it beyond your limits, because that's when you run into problems. And like I said, while there's no obvious visible drop-offs, you're on a mountain. There's drop-offs there. You just can't see them because you got all the trees and vegetation and everything. The other thing to consider is, I know Tail of the Dragon is the thing to do when you're in the Gatlinburg area in Tennessee, or you're in North Carolina where this, in Deal's Gap. Everybody talks about the Tail of the Dragon. You get your patches and your pins, and after people have done it, they talk about, oh yeah, it was, such a ride. And there's a little bit of bragging, I suppose, that goes on there. I think a lot of people, after they finish it, they make this ride out to be something more than it really is. And a lot of people will say, hey, once you've done it once, yeah, for the most part, it's not something most people want to do again. And I would say the only reason I did it a second time was because my wife didn't get to go last year. She wanted to go this year, so I rode it a second time. If we went down there again, would I ride it again? I could easily skip it and not really miss anything, because unlike a lot of the other rides in the area, as you're seeing throughout this video, there's just not a whole lot to look at. It's interesting because it pushes you from a technical perspective and it kind of pushes your skill set a little bit. But in terms of the scenery and all that kind of stuff, this is what you get. A lot of trees on either side. There's no real awesome views or overlooks or anything like that. It's just about, oh, I rode the Tail of the Dragon. There's 318 turns and 11 miles. And you get your pin and your patch, and you get your Junior G-Man points. That makes you feel cool, and everybody thinks you're cool, I suppose. But that's all there is to it. And so if you are really wanting to ride rides in this area that are going to be, dare I say, more majestic, a lot more scenery, a lot more to look at, this is about the worst one out of the group. So while we're sitting here talking about this, why don't we identify some of the other roads that you're going to want to do and some of the other things that you're going to want to do if you're in this area. My favorite road, I'm just going to start out with my favorite, is 441. I absolutely love that road. It's longer than the Tail of the Dragon, especially if you start it in the Gatlinburg area and kind of work your way down into North Carolina. It has multiple overlooks with breathtaking, astonishingly awesome views. It is not as technical, but you still have to be careful on that road on 441. There are still going to be some sharp turns. There's still going to be some elevation changes. In fact, there is probably some more, there's parts of that road that are slightly more technical than anything you're going to find on the Tail of the Dragon. It's just not one turn after another, after another, after another. There's beautiful streams that go right along 441 for most of it. Much higher likelihood of seeing unusual wildlife, elk and black bears. We saw last year black bears on 441 a couple of times, one of which where they were walking down the road as we were on it on motorcycles. Everybody's in a car taking pictures. We're like, can we hurry this up? We're exposed. But that is, to me, if I'm in this area and I could only ride one road, the 441 for me would be it. I know other people have other opinions, and that's fine. The Cherahalla Skyway. I never know how to say it. I'll put it's Cherohala, Skyway. And so that's a nice one. From Gatlinburg, it's a real pain to get to. I mean, it's like a couple of hours just to get to the beginning of it, which for me is on the northwestern part of it. And then I ride the Skyway all the way down into, I guess that would be Robbinsville, maybe I have it backwards, but that's a really nice one too. It's like 50 miles. And again, it's not super technical. There is some elevation changes. There are some nice overlooks, but it's not as crazy as this one is in terms of the turns and all that stuff and the tightness, and not as many cars. It's not as traveled as this one. For the Skyway, I don't worry about it nearly as much in terms of when we get there. Usually we get there midday. Not a big deal. It's kind of cool too because they have the Harley dealer. So if you ride a Harley, they have one right at the beginning. And then if you go further down, you can go all the way to Bryson City, I suppose, in North Carolina, which is a little bit of a ride, but there's another dealer over there, like a little storefront, not like one with bikes and stuff like that. I would say the 321 is also a really nice road. In fact, that's what we took up to the Tail of the Dragon from Gatlinburg. There's, again, nice. That one is a really relaxed ride. And again, there's streams. There's just a lot of nice forest. A lot more to look at than the Tail of the Dragon would be for sure. So that is certainly one to consider. Blue Ridge Parkway is one to consider. If you want something a little bit more technical, that would be Route 32. That's a little bit north of Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge area. I would highly recommend, if you haven't been in this area, do the best job you can of staying out of Pigeon Forge. It is a giant tourist trap that has got bumper to bumper traffic pretty much all day, every day. And so when we come here, we stay in Gatlinburg, and we usually stay very close to where, right on the strip of Gatlinburg, and then where 441 starts, and there's not nearly as much traffic. But if you are going to be staying at a hotel in Pigeon Forge, trust me, especially in the summertime, you're making a giant mistake, because I can tell you this, when we were leaving to go home, we had to go through Pigeon Forge, and and this is 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. It took 10 light turns on a single stoplight for us to get through that single light. So it changed 10 times. It took an hour to basically go 10 miles, a little over an hour, and it was already getting hot. So just be very careful of where you stay, just because. And in Pigeon Forge, it's not like anything where you can really walk to or anything like that. So you're going to be on the bikes if you want to go get something to eat, if you want to go to stores. Where if you can stay closer to Gatlinburg, that little main strip there, and the hotels there, especially that are close by, you park the bikes after a long day, you go walk the strip, you can get food, you can go shopping, you can do all that stuff and have an enjoyable time. You don't have to worry about where you're going to park the bikes, all that kind of stuff. You don't have to worry about all the traffic. And when you're trying to get back to your hotel, you've had a long day, so kind of keep that in mind as well. And I kind of mentioned this already, but when you're riding these roads, watch out for wildlife. And the wildlife here, especially if you're coming from other parts of the country where you're not used to it, like, again, we're from Illinois, so it's not something that we're typically used to seeing where, oh, look, there's a black bear on the road. That happens. You've got black bears with cubs, which can be a little bit more aggressive. Last year when we were in this area, we saw black bears every single day that we were in the Gatlinburg area, sometimes a heck of a lot closer than we anticipated at the hotel. And when we were out to eat, it was one right by the window. So when we were riding, like I said, we saw one walking down, or actually a couple walking down the street coming in the opposite direction, passed right by us. So you do want to be aware that there is going to be wildlife there, the elk, and these things will be pretty much all over the place. And so you just have to make sure that as you are riding, I don't like to ride any of these areas at night. And so we try to make it a point to be back at our hotel usually before sundown, just because you always run the risk, right? When you've got a heavily forested area where there's not a lot of infrastructure, there's going to be a lot of wildlife. The small animals can be dangerous too on these turns. And so it's not like, oh, look, there's a squirrel or a rabbit or something. You do that on a turn, that could be a problem. Obviously, the larger wildlife is an issue too. So just keep that in mind. It might be a good idea. There's not a lot of visibility when you are riding at night here. It's not like you've got street lights or anything like that. And some of these turns come up pretty fast. And again, just be aware that in the morning time, you can have a significant amount of fog. I mean, there's a reason why they call this area the Smoky Mountains. It's because they're under fog quite a bit, especially when you're getting into July and August and things like that. Like I said, the ride up here, there was one point where I was a little bit concerned. I'm like, man, I hope this isn't like this by the time we get to the tail, because we're going to have to wait this out, and hopefully this fog burns out, because on 321 there was heavy fog to the point where it's like, well, I can see about maybe 40 feet in front of me, but which is fine when you're on flat land in the middle of a cornfield. It's not so fine when you're like, I'm not super familiar with these roads, and when's the next sharp turn coming up? So just keep that in mind. Believe it or not, we are getting close to the end of this ride. And again, I took it slow because I had my buddy behind me. I had my wife that was behind him that had never ridden the ride before. So could I have taken this quicker and still been comfortable? Sure. But again, I've got, when you're leading a ride, you've got the responsibility of not just yourself, but making sure that you're doing it at such a pace where you're not putting other people in danger as well. And so when you get to the end, like I said, it's nice because you're going to see in Deals Gap, you've got two different like little shops for souvenirs. You can get your shirt and all that kind of stuff. And they've got patches and pins, and that's also the place where you can get the information for the people who took the pictures. There's usually a couple different companies. I've used two different ones. Both of them were awesome. They sent the stuff right away. One time I had an issue where the picture that I got, the digital download, it wasn't downloading properly. I contacted them within like 5 minutes. They're like, okay, here's a PDF, or not a PDF, but a PNG or whatever of the picture. So it's just fun. There's a restaurant here. You know what I thought was cool? There's a little 2-pump gas station here in Deals Gap, only premium. It's like they know their stuff, right? They were really thinking through it. It's like, okay, we've got pretty much mostly bikes coming here. They need the 93 octane. That's all they offered, which was pretty good. There's actually a little motel. If you really wanted to, like if you were all about Tail the Dragon, you could stay at the little motel you're going to see here in a couple seconds. There's not a ton of rooms. I don't think I would want to stay there just because the constant motorcycles and these Miatas, a lot of them had exhausts that were kind of noisy. So I wouldn't want to be dealing with that noise all the time. But if you're somebody who wants to stay real close, the option is definitely there. So you're going to see Deals Gap coming up here, but as always, want to say thank you for all your views and subscription and all that stuff. Really appreciate it. It means a lot for a small channel like ours. As always, thank you so much for being here. We're going to see you hopefully next week. And by the way, if you haven't, I'll put the video in the upper right-hand corner of another place you should see, and that is the Wheels Through Time Museum, which is very close to here once you finish this ride, within an hour and a half or so. Definitely worth seeing. Check that video out in the upper right-hand corner. Again, thanks for being here, and we will see you next week.